Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Paul McKeever. I'm the head of electrical research at ORE Catapult. And this afternoon, I'm going to be talking to you about offshore wind and how we're addressing the 2050 energy system challenge, with obviously plenty of examples of what we're doing in the north of England. So I'm guessing one or two people might not know who the Catapult is. So I'm going to briefly explain that in a moment. Then I'm going to take you through how we're trying to transform the energy system as part of the transitioning towards net zero, with a particular emphasis on offshore wind and how we're linking that into hydrogen, which is becoming more prevalent in discussions. I've got one or two case studies of offshore wind projects that we're involved in at the Catapult that are relevant to this net zero discussion. Some other developments as well that are focused on the north of England. And then I'll give you a few conclusions at the end of the presentation. So firstly, the Catapult. So for those who don't know, there are 9 Catapult centres around the UK. In our case, we're based Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. We have 2 main bases in Blythe, just up the road from here, and also Glasgow in Scotland. And essentially, we're all research organisations, independent, not-for-profit organisations, trying to further the various developments across the UK. Our organisation focuses on 3 areas: test and validation, operational performance, and also my area, which is research and disruptive innovation. So we're going to be covering some of those areas that are in the bullets this afternoon. Certainly energy storage, energy networks. So it proves to be quite an interesting time ahead of us. So what I'm going to talk about now is how we're trying to transform the energy system, not just in offshore renewables, but generally. So what I'm trying to show with this slide is what the current energy system looks like, how we think that's going to look in the future, and two significant outcomes as far as offshore renewables is concerned. So currently we have about 11 gigawatts of offshore wind operating in the UK waters. Most of our domestic properties use natural gas for their heating. Most of the cars, of course, are fuel engine vehicles. Just under half of electricity generation comes from fossil fuels. And as we transform towards the future system, we've got quite a significant target coming up: 40 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. Hoping to convert a lot of natural gas heating to maybe other mediums such as hydrogen. Electric vehicles, which has already been mentioned this afternoon. Obviously a small amount of electricity generation coming from fossil fuels, so in the region of say 20%. And what does that mean in terms of outcomes? Well, certainly for offshore wind, much bigger deployment. So we're targeting 75, 80 gigawatts of wind by 2050. And also because of innovations in other areas such as storage and interconnections, the variability of renewables should be largely overcome in that time frame. So in summary, I'm talking about future energy systems which will be more decentralized, multi-vector in terms of energy sources, and also reliant on renewables. So when we talk about reliance on renewables in terms of the UK, that definitely means reliance on offshore wind power. So if I focus now on the 40 gigawatt target by 2030, on the left-hand side of this slide is an illustration of the Dogger Bank wind farm. So this is going to be one of the new wind farms that helps us to achieve that target of 40 gigawatts, which is, if you think about it, it's almost 4 times as much as the operational gigawatts that we have at the moment. And that's 10 years away, or even 9 years away. So that's a significant challenge. So we're going to need quite a few Dogger Banks. So just to give you a few facts on Dogger Bank wind farm, obviously very much based in the northeast. We've got onshore substations in Teesside and Humberside. Construction of the wind farm actually started last year. It's planned to be completed in 2025. And it's due to connect about 3.6 gigawatts of offshore wind into the system. So that's effectively a third of what's currently operational just from one wind farm. So it's a pretty significant wind farm. Will be the world's largest offshore wind farm. So the other thing I wanted to highlight was the 2050 target, 75, 80 gigawatts. And there was a report that Offshore Wind Industry Council and ourselves, ORE Catapult, produced late last year called Solving the Integration Challenge. And this was looking at the interaction between offshore wind and hydrogen. And there's two key findings from that report that I've highlighted on this slide. The first one was, if we are going to connect 75, 80 gigawatts of wind to the energy system, it's not all going to be into the electrical grid. It's just not realistic to do that amount of wind in that time frame. Some of it is going to be done through other means, such as producing hydrogen. The other finding was the cost comparison between green and blue hydrogen. So as Andrew Crossland was saying in the keynote earlier today, green from an environmental point of view is definitely the preferred choice. And what this report has shown is, in time, certainly over the next few decades, we believe it is possible to get green hydrogen cost competitive so that it becomes a bit of a no-brainer as to which way we go. So what I'm going to do now is show you very briefly 3 projects related to energy systems that we're involved in at the ORE Catapult. So I've got Milford Haven Energy Kingdom, Project Clue, which is about local energy communities, and also H105, which is a hydrogen-based project. So if I start with the Clue project, this is a European project that we're involved in that includes a number of demonstrations in 4 European countries. We have a UK demonstration in Kirkcaldy and Leavenmouth regions on the east coast of Scotland. And essentially what we're doing is we're showing how, certainly at a local level, we can connect together multi-energy vectors and control them in an effective way. And that includes hydrogen, it includes wind, PV, energy storage, and use of the local network, the SP Energy Networks infrastructure. And certainly for us, the relevance is we're using our 7 megawatt demonstration turbine in Leavenmouth to provide power for this solution. The second project, H105, this again is in the Leavenmouth region. So we've been in conversation with SGN, Scottish Gas Networks. They've recently had the go-ahead from Offgen to create this project, which is effectively a hydrogen network. So what they're wanting to do in phase 1 is to supply 300 homes with hydrogen. And they're talking to us because they're planning to use the power from our Leavenmouth demonstration turbine to power the electrolyzer. So in effect, we're going to create green hydrogen. And this will be the first 100% hydrogen to homes, zero carbon network project in the world. So it's a pretty exciting project that's just kicking off now. And finally, I've got the Milford Haven Energy Kingdom project. Now, to the eagle-eyed spotters here, this is a north of England-based project. Last time I checked, Milford Haven was in South Wales. But the reason why I've mentioned it is because it's a classic example of how we're looking at existing oil and gas assets and trying to repurpose them, in this case, for the production and distribution of hydrogen. And that's quite important to all regions, certainly the Northeast, because there's a number of oil and gas companies that are looking at this kind of transition at the moment. A recent government paper just last month was launched, the North Sea Transition Deal, which talks about how do we use the strength of our oil and gas sector in the UK, and how do we transition it as part of the Prime Minister's 10-point plan. So certainly a relevant read, and using these assets for things like hydrogen production is very much on the agenda. So what I'm going to do now is talk about some of the local activity. I've got an example of programs, I've got examples of academic activity, and I've got examples of future announcements or future projects that are coming along for the region. So the first one I've got here is a program called TIGA, which is Technology, Innovation and Green Growth for Offshore Renewables. So this is a program that was launched last year, £3.5 million, primarily funded by the North of Tyne Combined Authority. Really important that we've got two significant industry backers in this program in the likes of EDF and Equinor. So they are significant wind farm owner operators in our sector supporting this program. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to get local companies to pitch solutions to those two big giants in terms of technology and business support. Some of the technical areas that they're looking at are listed on the slide here. So certainly a chance for those Northeast companies to get involved in our sector. And just on that point, Equinor have recently unveiled designs just last month for their operations base, which is going to be built at the port of Tyne. So very much setting down the foundations for significant activity in the region. And similarly, we've got EDF. They've actually had a presence for a little bit longer in our region, and probably the most significant presence for the Catapult is the Blythe Offshore Demonstrator Wind Farm, which is very, very close to our site in Blythe. If you drive up the coast, you can't miss it effectively. It's quite close to shore. And essentially this site is key because it's a demonstration site. It's not a commercial wind farm, so it allows us to demonstrate new technologies. The initial turbines that went out there were gravity-based foundations. So those foundations were built on the River Tyne, as shown in the photograph there. And we were heavily involved in that early phase. And going forwards, there's an opportunity to develop new technologies on that site, such as floating offshore wind, which is going to be pretty important. So going on to academic activity in the region, I've highlighted a couple of examples here. So we've got the Prosperity Partnerships program, which is called New Partnership for Offshore Wind, a significant nearly £8 million program over 5 years, which involves Durham University as one of 3 universities. Funding is coming from Ørsted, Siemens Gamesa and EPSRC. Ørsted and Siemens Gamesa is pretty significant because they're the largest offshore wind owner operators and turbine OEMs in the sector. So you can't get bigger names to support you than those. And I think what's also really encouraging is they're supporting low TRL activity, which is quite rare for industry to put significant amounts of money into TRL 1, 2, 3 activity. So that's great news for the sector. The other example on this slide is the N8 research partnership. So this is 8 northern universities, which I think have been in partnership since about 2007. So they focus on promoting collaboration across those 8 institutions. And then also about driving economic growth. And a number of programs have been set off over the years. And one of the recent ones is the Net Zero North Sustainable Hydrogen Economy program. So very relevant to what I'm talking about today. And then just looking forward to the future, we've got, you may have seen in the press recently, we've got the Gigafactory. So an announcement that Britishvolt will set up a gigafactory in the Blythe region on the old power station site. They've recently bought the site. That could create over 3,000 direct jobs. Although it's initially targeting automotive, I think other sectors will benefit from this as well, including the energy sector. And also the even more recent announcement was that GE planned to set up a new blade factory in Teesside, opening as soon as 2023. It will supply blades for the Dogger Bank wind farm, which I mentioned earlier. 750 new jobs in theory. And the blade it will produce, the 107-meter blade, is the one that's in the photo here that will be tested or has been tested at our site in Blythe in our 100-meter blade test facility. So in conclusion, what I've tried to show you today is the transformation of the energy system will be multi-energy vector, and that can help the North with our net zero economy. Obviously, the recent announcements like the Gigafactory and the Blade facility, I think, are excellent examples of net zero job creation. I've also shown you that we're already a region, as a region, a leader in offshore renewables with the projects and programs that I've given you as examples. And certainly that's contributing towards the UK's net zero ambitions. Also, the activity in our region is founded on a long history and expertise in heavy engineering. And I think the region's got a very, very strong track record in transferring these skills and repurposing these skills across several sectors, as mentioned there. Also, our nation's net zero ambitions have many interdependencies. I mean, I've shown you one example today about how offshore wind and hydrogen interact, but there are other examples as well. And we have to think about it as a net zero target rather than a specific energy sector or whatever. And then finally, the offshore wind sector or subsector faces some significant challenges in the short, medium and long term, particularly in the development of floating wind technology and the transformation of the offshore network. But I think the north of England is already tackling these challenges in the projects I've shown today, and is certainly ready to do more. So on that positive note, I'm going to finish. Thanks for listening.
Okay, many thanks for that, Paul.